My name is Daniel Reese. I'm a retired paramedic from a small coastal town in Oregon, where the cliffs meet the Pacific and fog rolls in like a secret that never quite gets told. Back in the day, I worked out of Station 4 in Tillamook County, a tight-knit crew, mostly volunteer, but as capable as any big city force. For nearly 2 decades, I answered calls that range from car wrecks on Highway 101 to heart attacks in trailer parks nestled beneath ancient pines. I'd seen people die, brought a few back, and carried more grief in my chest than I ever let anyone know. But in all those years, I never imagined I'd become one of the stories. It was the winter of 1997, one of those brutal Oregon seasons where rain is more a presence than a weather pattern, incessant, saturating, and slow to move on. There was a respiratory virus going around, nasty enough to swamp the ER at Tillamook Regional. People were coming in with high fevers, severe dehydration, oxygen levels crashing out of nowhere. We were running nonstop. That particular afternoon, we were called to a double wide out near the edge of the forest. A woman in her 70s, living alone. When we got there, she was curled up in her recliner, wrapped in 3 blankets, eyes barely open. The heat inside her place was stifling, and all the windows were shut. You could taste the sickness in the air, damp, metallic, and heavy. I was the first in, my partner Sheila right behind me. I knelt beside the woman, speaking calmly, trying to ease the mask over her face. As I adjusted the straps, she exhaled sharply, a long, wheezing breath that hit me square in the face before I could turn away. I felt it go in. I felt it like breathing in someone else's suffering. It started 3 days later. At first, I thought it was fatigue, the kind that sneaks up on you after too many night shifts. But by day 4, I was drenched in sweat, vomiting every hour, and couldn't keep even water down. My wife, Claire, tried to convince me to go to the ER, but I brushed it off until I stood in front of the mirror and didn't recognize the man staring back. Hollow eyes, skin like paper. I looked like I'd been dead for a week. My heart was racing 150 beats per minute, maybe more. I checked my radial pulse. Nothing. I knew what that meant. Low pressure, dangerously low. I grabbed Claire's hand and muttered, "Call 911. By the time the ambulance arrived, I was halfway gone. The paramedics, former colleagues of mine, started IVs in both arms. I remember flashing lights, the sound of the wheels on the gurney scraping the gravel, then the inside of the ER. Then nothing. They told me later that when a nurse pushed a painkiller into my 4, a synthetic morphine derivative, my body simply shut down. My blood pressure dropped to 40 over 0. They Narcaned me twice, tried to reverse it, tried to wake me up. Nothing. I was gone. At least I thought I was gone. But what happened next? That's where everything changed. That's where this world slipped away and something else took its place. I don't remember a tunnel. I don't remember seeing my body from above. It wasn't like the things you hear in movies. It was more like relief. Like I'd been carrying a weight so heavy for so long that I didn't even know I was carrying it until it was suddenly gone. I slipped out. That's the only way I can describe it. One moment I was struggling in a hospital bed, and the next I was free. Floating, but not in the way we think of floating. It was more like becoming the air itself. Warm, expansive, limitless. All around me were these brilliant points of light like stars, but not. They moved with intention, with joy. I didn't see faces, but I knew them. Somehow, I knew every one of them. There was no fear, only love. Not the kind we talk about here on Earth, but something deeper, pure, electric. They swirled around me, welcomed me, as if I had finally come home. And in that moment, I remembered who I really was. And I realized that everything I had ever thought about death, everything I'd feared, all the darkness, all the endings, had been a misunderstanding. I don't know how long I was in that space. Time didn't flow the way it does here. There were no minutes, no hours, just presence, just being. The lights, those intelligent orbs, those radiant presences didn't speak in words. Not the way we understand them, but I understood them perfectly. their intentions, their emotions, their joy in seeing me. It all came through as clearly as if they had been shouting it. Only they weren't shouting. They were loving, fully, unconditionally. Each one felt like a hug for my soul. And then I landed, if that's even the right word. Suddenly, I was standing or floating in a place that felt solid, but wasn't made of anything I could describe. It had shape, but not mass. Indirect light glowed from nowhere and everywhere. There were tables, yes, tables, and objects that looked vaguely like tools or instruments. Not medical, not industrial, just devices of some sort. But what stood out most were the beings. There were 3 of them at first. Short, robed, their features were soft, their movements playful, and they were positively beaming at me like they'd been waiting forever. They reminded me of children playing dress-up, not in a mocking way, but with an innocent kind of joy, like old friends reunited after lifetimes apart. One of them said, and I swear it was almost with a chuckle, "He doesn't remember us." And they all giggled. Yes, giggled. These divine, ancient, otherworldly beings giggled like kids at a secret. Strangely, I felt a tickle of recognition, like I should remember them, like they had been there before, maybe long before my current life began, maybe in lives before this one, if such things exist, and I'm starting to believe they do. But before I could piece that together, another presence entered the space. He was tall, not just in height, but in presence. Wispy, almost translucent, like mist shaped into a figure. When he moved, it was like watching smoke drift underwater, slow, elegant, trailing behind itself. His eyes were the most alive things I've ever seen. Not human eyes, not really, but blazing with compassion, depth, and something like amusement. I knew, immediately, this one was in charge. He didn't need to say a word. I felt his purpose, and it was saturated in kindness. When he came close to me, something in my chest cracked open. Not physically, but emotionally, spiritually. I felt overwhelmed by a love so vast, so pure, that I wanted to sob. I couldn't hold it. The sensation pushed up through my throat, filled my eyes. It was like the love of a million mothers wrapped into one radiant burst, directed right at me. I couldn't breathe, not because I was suffocating, but because breath didn't seem necessary anymore. Then he spoke, not aloud, more like inside me. "You've had a long journey," he said. I nodded, or maybe I didn't. I don't remember if I had a body in that space. But the agreement was mutual. I felt seen, understood. "Are we doing the life review now?" I asked, try to ground myself in something familiar. I'd heard about this moment, that we're supposed to be shown our life, every detail, every mistake, every kindness. The tall being laughed, not mockingly, warmly. "Sure," he said. "How would he want to start?" That caught me off guard. Wasn't he supposed to show me? Wasn't this a judgment? Apparently not. I started sharing. Not everything, just a few moments, mostly regrets. Like the time I turned down a summer ranger job on Crater Lake to take a higher-paying shift supervisor role. Claire had begged me to take the ranger gig. She wanted the quiet, the remoteness, the peace. I'd chosen the grind instead. I told him about that. He smiled again. "That's enough," he said gently. "Time to go back." "Back?" No, I said, panic rising. "You don't understand. I'm staying. I'm home. I belong here." He gave me a knowing look. "You have more to do." The smaller beings had already begun to disappear, moving off into other rooms or dimensions. I couldn't tell. The place around me began to shift, dissolve. The light faded, and I felt something in me begin to lower, descend, like being tuned back to a different frequency. I pleaded with him. "My wife will miss me, sure, but she's strong. My parents will grieve, but they'll survive. Please, just let me stay." But he only smiled one last time and whispered, "You are going back." And with that, the space around me collapsed into darkness. The descent felt like falling, not physically, but emotionally, like being pulled back into a smaller version of myself. A compression, a forgetting, The vastness I had just been a part of began to narrow, shrink. The light dimmed, the colors faded, and then, just before I re-entered my body, I passed through something that changed me more than anything else. It was a place, a realm, I suppose, but not like the loving, joyful space I had just left. This place was close, far too close to where we live, and yet completely removed from light. It was a liminal zone, a shadow space hanging between this world and whatever comes after. And it was awful, empty, lonely. There was no fire, no torment, nothing like the religious hell's caves we're taught to fear. But that's what made it so much worse. There was nothing, just silence, isolation, disconnection so complete it clawed at my soul. I could feel the despair of others, not because I saw them, but because I felt them. Beings trapped in their own suffering, clinging to regrets, anger, guilt. They weren't being punished. They were simply stuck in what they couldn't let go of. I didn't want to be there. I didn't even want to look at it. But I passed through it just long enough to understand this is what happens when we hold on, when we refuse to forgive, when we define ourselves by pain. It was a realm of echoes, not screams, and that somehow made it more terrifying. Then, in an instant, I dropped the rest of it away. I slammed back into my body like hitting cold pavement. One second I was infinite, the next I was flesh, tubes, weight, and struggle. My eyelids fluttered open. Dim fluorescent light. Monitors beeping. I was in ICU. It felt like breathing through a straw. I could barely move, but I was aware. I looked to my right and saw the blood pressure machine. 44/20. Barely enough to be conscious. A nurse passed by, and when she saw my eyes, she froze. "You're awake," she whispered, almost reverently. I croaked out something, maybe her name. I don't remember. She leaned in. "We weren't sure you'd make it. You were gone, but you're back. Back." The word echoed through me like a hammer strike. Back. That place, that love, that truth, all of it was gone now. Fading fast, like a dream under morning light. "I need to talk to someone," I said. "I need to tell someone what happened." She smiled gently. "First, let me page the doctor. Then we'll talk, okay?" I nodded, though everything in me wanted to scream. I wasn't ready. I didn't want to be here. The air felt too heavy. My body, foreign. My heart, grieving something no one else in that room could see. Claire came in later that evening. She rushed to my bedside, tears in her eyes, holding my hand like she never wanted to let go again. I held hers just as tightly, because part of me didn't trust one was fully back. "You scared the hell out of me," she whispered, pressing her forehead to mine. "I wasn't scared," I said. "Not even once." She pulled back, confused. "I was home," I added softly. "And now I'm here again." She didn't understand, not fully. How could she? I barely understood it myself. But she knew something had changed. That much was clear. Over the next few days, I recovered physically, enough to be discharged and sent home. But something had shifted inside me in ways no blood test or scan could detect. At night, I would lie awake, try to remember the sensation of that love, that expansion, that rightness. But it was slipping, fading. Each day, the colors dimmed a little more in my memory, and part of me started to doubt if it had even happened. Was it a dream? A hallucination? But deep down, in the marrow of my soul, I knew it was real. More real than this place. More true than anything I'd ever touched, tasted, or seen on Earth. When I got home, everything was the same, but I wasn't. The kitchen smelled like Claire's tea. The dog barked at the mailman. My favorite chair still creaked when I sat in it. But the world felt muted, like someone had turned the color down on reality. Everything here was heavier, slower, dimmer. I tried to tell people what had happened. Not right away. I wasn't that reckless. But a few close friends, some old colleagues from the station. I needed to say it aloud, to make it real. I needed someone to look me in the eye and say, "I believe you." But that's not what I got. Most people nodded politely. Some tried to change the subject. A couple of them, the ones I trusted most, looked at me like I cracked under the pressure. One day, over coffee, my old captain, Rick, leaned in and said quietly, "You might want to ease off talking like that around the station." People were starting to, wonder. Wonder what? If I'd gone soft? Lost my grip? Here I was, holding the most beautiful truth I had ever touched, and I was being told to hide it like a dirty secret. So I did. I zipped it up, swallowed it, packed it deep inside, and went back to mowing the lawn, shopping for groceries, and making small talk about the weather. But it never really went away. The memory of that place, of those beings, of the love, it pulsed underneath the surface like a secret heartbeat. I carried it with me everywhere. In traffic, in the grocery store, sitting alone at night while Claire read on the couch beside me. I began to see things differently. When someone snapped at a cashier or lost their temper in public, I didn't see anger anymore. I saw pain. I saw souls that had forgotten who they were, just like I had, just like we all have. One day, a man came to me, a young father from our neighborhood. He'd lost his daughter in a car accident, only 6 years old. He was shattered, barely able to stand. He heard I'd been through something and asked to talk. I invited him in, made him tea, and when he asked if I believed in an afterlife, I told him the truth. I told him everything. He cried. So did I. When we were finished, he didn't say much, just hugged me, tighter than I expected, and whispered, "Thank you." That night, I realized something. Maybe I didn't come back for me. Maybe I came back for them, for the ones still stuck in the fear, in the grief, in the belief that death is the end of something rather than the beginning of something far more real than this skin and bone illusion we cling to. I started opening up more after that, quietly, carefully, not with megaphones or pulpits, just conversations, safe spaces. I spoke in small groups, sometimes at local hospice meetings. I never told anyone what to believe. I just shared what I knew, and people listened. Not everyone, but the ones who were ready, they heard it. You can see it in their eyes when it lands, when it clicks. Not hope, knowing. It's been 15 years since that night in the ICU. Life went on, as life does. The mortgage got paid. My hair turned gray. Claire and I took up gardening. I started volunteering with a grief support group, mostly just listening. Occasionally, when a moment felt right, I'd share my story. Not everyone believes me. That used to bother me. Now it doesn't. Because this thing I experienced, this truth I walked through, doesn't need to be believed to be real. It simply is. Like gravity, like breath. What matters is that I remember it, that I let it shape me. There are still days when I miss that place. Fiercely. The love, I felt there wasn't something I could replicate here. Not exactly, but I found echoes of it in small, quiet moments. When Claire rests her head on my shoulder in the evening. When I watch the ocean breathe in and out with the tide. When a stranger smiles at another stranger for no reason other than the shared miracle of being alive. We got it backwards, the way we talk about death. We make it this enemy, this end. But it's not. It's a return, a remembering. I didn't lose myself when I died. I found myself. And now, when someone tells me they've lost a loved one, I look them in the eyes and say the one thing I know with more certainty than anything else. You didn't lose them. You can't lose them. We don't die, we go home. The ones we love, they're still with us. Right here, closer than breath. Just on another frequency, another channel. Invisible to these tired human eyes, but real. Realer than any of this. I'm no preacher. I'm no prophet. I'm just a guy who died once and came back with something worth sharing. Not to scare you, not to save you, but to remind you, you are so much more than you think you are. And you are never, ever alone.